Well, welcome back to Dogwood Hall, the old dogwood tree. It's the end of another long, hot summer day. Now, I've already done a video this week, but it was a rather long video on the Atropa campaign setting, 75-minute video, 30-odd page PDF to read through. I realized not everyone wants to look at that or has even had time to go through that. So I wanted to do a quick stopgap video on how to have fun playing D&D and other tabletop role-playing games. That's right, I'm here to tell you how to have fun playing these games. No, that would be absurd. Of course I can't tell you how to have fun. So the idea here is going to be to go through some academic and scholarly concepts within social sciences about how to classify fun, how to categorize fun, and how you can apply those concepts to tabletop role-playing games. So it's been one of the videos that I've intended to make since the beginning of the year. For one reason or another, I'm always putting off which videos I want to make, so I have this ever-expanding list of videos that I'd like to make and just haven't gotten around to yet. But just recently I was watching videos from several different creators that, as far as I know, have no regular contact with one another, and it's the same old story in that we regularly seem to be dismissing the concept of fun as somehow lowbrow or entry level into the game, that when you've matured with your approach towards tabletop role-playing games, you'll leave just having fun behind and move on to whatever higher order transcendent ideas people have about where they're going with these role-playing games. It's not always clear. In fact, most of the time when you ask them what are these higher order ideas that they have about role-playing games, they really don't answer. They sort of mumble a few things and then trail off into silence. I have had a few people tell me what they were looking for as far as immersing themselves into a character or a role within the game, and I appreciate those efforts. But many of the times, those things were what I would consider to be subsumed under the heading of fun. And so, one of the things that strikes me as the Irving Goffman, who's sometimes thought of as a symbolic interactionist, but really was known for like the dramaturgical perspective that we're always sort of on stage and playing towards the interaction with other people. So this interaction order is always based on sort of the locus of interaction being face to face. And I think in Goffman's time, mid 20th century, we didn't have to think about the ability to interact with each other online in many of the ways that we can now. And so I think much of this applies to online gaming as well as at table gaming. So, in an essay from 1961 called Fun and Games, Goffman made his position pretty clear. Games can be fun to play, and fun alone is the approved reason for playing them. It doesn't get any simpler than that. You are supposed to, you are allowed to, you are free to have fun while playing games. So let's begin the video by just dealing with simple definitions about what is fun. And for much of the early part of the video, we'll be referring to this article by Walter Podolsek, Distinctions of Fun, Enjoyment, and Leisure, from 1991. It was published in the journal Leisure Studies, Volume 10, Number 2, pages 133 to 148. And so for Podolsek, fun then is a social, emotional, interactive process which deconstructs the social and historical biographical inequalities of lived experience to create a with equal other social human bond. And we're going to find this is pretty consistent between all the sources that we're going to talk about in this video. One, that it is always social and that it is other-referential rather than just self-referential. You are also playing in a kind of egalitarian sense as opposed to being part of a hierarchy. And this doesn't mean that you couldn't play, for instance, games with your boss, and that would be part of another hierarchy. which the two of you are involved with. But during the game, during the parts that we might call fun, we would be sharing an experience as co-equals rather than as boss employee or as parent and child or whatever the case may be. Similarly, we'll have another definition about what is fun from Gary Allen Fine and Ugo Corte. This article was published in the journal Sociological Theory, volume number 35, issue number 1, pages 64 to 86. The title is Group Pleasures, Collaborative Commitment, Shared Narrative in the Sociology of Fun. It was published in 2017. Their definition is fun is a collaborative, unscripted sequence of action that produces and is perceived as producing joint hedonic satisfaction. And this becomes very important. And again, it's we're talking about fun as something that is other-referential rather than just being self-referential. So it's the joint hedonic satisfaction. Hedonic being pleasurable or pleasure-seeking. And so that we're seeking this pleasure as part of a group, as a social experience. This is a very important distinction from what we'll get to later about what is enjoyment, which is more of the individually referenced or individually focused hedonic satisfaction. Now we want to return back to the Podolchak article and look at what is enjoyment. Now this would be a similar process, but as I've just mentioned, enjoyment is more of an individual pursuit of pleasurable experience. So for Podolchak, then it would define enjoyment as enjoyment appears to be more internal, since the individual is evaluating both the process and the projected outcome. Specific and predetermined outcomes or rewards are expected in enjoyment. Pleasure, primarily satisfaction, is developed by doing a specific activity, though in a more internal and thus self-reflective orientation. Then next we'll take a look at what is leisure, and this is also a related concept. However, we'll see that for Podolchak, leisure appears generally to refer to a time component in which one is free of responsibilities, and when one chooses and is structurally forced to do an activity to pass the time. By doing a leisure activity, fun or enjoyment, or both, might result. Leisure is freely choosing an activity within social free time schedules. The attitude for leisure, entertainment, mindless, or relaxed suggests that common sense uses of leisure reflect a recuperative or recreative function. And just to touch on whether you agree that your leisure time would be structurally forced to elucidate what Podolchak is talking about here, his structural forcings are time and space. From Podolchak's perspective, then, fun and enjoyment are respectively seen as processes of other and self-oriented interactions, while leisure is seen as a social, structural context of free time. When interactants are having fun, they are outside themselves, but interactively connected with the others who are present. The feelings of fun only emerge in this social bond and require an equality condition among members. Let's wrap up the Podolchak article then by saying that, in summary, fun is described by the respondents as active involvement in an activity which the individual is doing, reframing, and socially structuring. This is not a passive involvement in an activity such as sitting back and being entertained. There is a degree of conscious choice, freedom, or looseness. Doing implies absorption in the interpretive and emotional basis of interaction. A person is totally occupied in the activity with all concentration and physical effort being directed at it. People feel they are in control when doing the activity. The individual is doing or structuring an activity and thereby is externally involved in the social environment. And there again, that goes back to focusing on the interaction with the other players at the table rather than being wrapped up in oneself. And so, when we talk about the doing implies absorption in interpretive and emotional basis of interaction, I have in previous videos talked about the fact that I don't really agree with the idea of immersion. And here, if we're talking about immersion in the other referential fun of the social group activity, then I think it's okay. I think there's some level of immersion that really is going to happen there. It's when immersion is the self-referential enjoyment to the exclusion of paying any attention to what the others are doing with themselves, their characters, their attempts to have fun with the group. So we have to find this balance between fun and enjoyment. Also wanted to take some time to go through the Fine and Quartet article to pull out some of the more salient points from there. There's a lot of overlap between the concepts and ideas in these different papers, and so I don't want to dwell on continuing to repeat and reiterate ideas that are the same from one paper to the next. So I just kind of wanted to tease out some of the more relevant details from the Fine and Quartet article about what is fun. Most of these are positive traits in that there are things that are fun. I think there's one or two that are sort of negative traits in that they're saying what fun is not. So what is fun is a process that is both spontaneous and structured, is embedded within many forms of social relations, including business, leisure, and political groups, where it adds tensile strength to what might otherwise be fragile connections. Helps to create a community. In the last video, we talked about the nature of community and how communities are constructed. Contributes to the formation, stability, and reproduction of the interaction order. And here again, we're in Goffman's sense. He was thinking of the interaction order as the locus of interaction being face-to-face. However, I think that in many ways, the tools that we have available to us now online when we're playing these games sort of simulate the locus being face-to-face in a way that is very similar as far as contributing to the other-referential nature of fun. So fun facilitates cohesion by allowing participants to feel that their social engagements are rewarding in themselves. Fun, however, is not a form of individual action, but an interpretation of a group project, simultaneously emotionally fulfilling, freely chosen, and emergent from situations. It is not a hedonistic, self-gratifying activity. It creates allegiance both through its emotional engagement and then through its subsequent narrative possibilities as retellings provide satisfaction and memory of satisfactions that colleagues have shared. And here's kind of where you've probably heard, an adventure is not a story, but rather the collaborative creation of a story, and the story actually doesn't come about until after the adventure is over and that you can then retell what happened. And that too, that calling back to the adventure is part of the shared and other referential nature of fun. And then lastly, fun links voluntary action and emotional entrainment, becoming a form of effective recall that can solidify social relations. And there's what we're talking about. We're talking about these shared experiences, and when we recall them and we repeat these details of stories, and frankly, even people that weren't present at the initial occurrence of the creation of the story can then become absorbed into it later because they learn the details through the retellings of the story. Lastly, we want to talk about this McManus and Furnham article, where we're going to introduce the concept of these 5 types of fun, and then also 5 attitudes towards having fun that can be found among the game-playing participants in whatever kind of, whether it's a board game or a role-playing game or what have you, as long as it's an other referential group shared social experience. Now, with the McManus and Furnham article, I'm not going to go through the statistics of it, which is actually the majority of the paper, and it's kind of interesting in the sense that what they did was they showed their respondents or participants in the study a list of words and had them make associations, which they later broke down into different classifications. So there's a classificatory system then for the 5 types of fun, and then another kind of taxonomy for the attitudes toward having fun. So we'll just go run through those very briefly. I'm not going to go through the word list or look at the actual correlations of how they broke it down, although I would highly recommend, if you're interested in the statistics of it, to go back through and read that article. I think it's available freely online. I don't think I needed to be on the other side of a paywall for this. But so the 5 types of fun then are type 1 sociability, type 2 contentment, type 3 achievement, type 4 sensual, type 5 ecstatic. So type 1 is really obvious, the sociability of being in a group experience where you're socializing with others and you feel that connection with the other people through the game. The contentment, that you're just sort of satisfied in the enjoyment and fun that you're having by being part of that group. And also then achievement itself is a type of fun, and this is one of the things that I've heard say, well, you shouldn't be worried about having fun, not everything is fun, sometimes it's about achievement, and in the achieving goals in game, or presumably out of it, you're going to have to slog through and kind of deal with things that aren't necessarily pleasant, and that's how you achieve things. Well, but in the context of a game, that earning those achievements is fun. Now, sensual, of course, can be a kind of sexual fun, but that's not what we're going to focus on here. It can also be, we'll say, gustatory fun. If you're enjoying eating a good meal, we're talking about the kind of fun that you're having by taking in these different sensory experiences, whether that's auditory or visual or olfactory or tactile, or your senses of taste and whatever else might be involved. Nociceptors, proprioceptors, and we will not get into all the human senses. And then lastly, the ecstatic, which kind of takes us beyond the physical realm into the higher order types of thinking. And I'm guessing that is what the people that I referred to earlier are pursuing, and so we recognize this as one of the types of fun. But these are not to be taken as each higher number being a higher order and type of fun. These are simply just categories of distinctly different types of fun. And then the last thing we're going to deal with then is the 5 attitudes towards fun, and this is sort of attitudes of the players, the people participating in the other referential social aspects of playing a game. In other words, what is it that they're finding fun? And type 1 risk-taking, type 2 fun people, type 3 happiness, type 4 money, and type 5 spontaneity. And so type 1 is pretty clear that people find fun in taking risks, and so that could be the risk of the character going through the dungeon and risking death, and it can also be from the player's aspect of sending a character through the dungeon and risking losing all the time and effort put into that character. Fun people is actually a reference to the attitude of those types of players towards having fun is that they enjoy being around other fun people with whom they are having fun. Then the third is happiness, and that's pretty much what it would sound like, is that what people are finding fun is that it increases their own personal sense of happiness with and through others. Type 4 again is also pretty much what you'd expect, that the attitude towards having fun is that increasing one's personal wealth or making money out of whatever the game is. So here we might include like gambling games and that sort of thing. And then the 5th type of fun is just the people who are enjoying the spontaneity of the game, is the unplanned occurrences that grow out of the social dynamic of having fun that they are actually looking for from their game playing experiences. Anyway, we don't want to berate this point because, like I said, this is supposed to be a much shorter video as opposed to the 75-minute video that I did on the Atropo campaign setting. And so just want to kind of wrap this up, and thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope to see you again in the next one. And we'll kind of wrap it up with these are the references that if you wanted to look them up, or I can probably I could put links to Google Scholar, but I don't know that all of them are available for free. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks.